Religious leaders are planning a pushback against the violence in Charlottesville and 45. At least 1,000 pastors, led by the Reverend Sharpton, will hold a rally later this morning at the Martin Luther King Memorial in response to the white supremacist and Nazi sympathizer demonstrations in Charlottesville. And the faith leaders will also be challenging President Trump on his response. Again, that'll be taking place this morning at the MLK Memorial beginning at 10 a.m. Let's go to our panel. So, I mean, obviously, marches bring attention to various issues. What I do think, I do find what they're doing with Charlottesville to be interesting. Because one of the complaints that I've always had is that you mobilize to rally, but you don't move people to Capitol Hill, to go to members of Congress in their offices, to show up and push them. And I just think that is important because they need to see people, not on television, see them in their offices, occupying their offices.
Yeah, marching is only half the battle, if you will. The other half that we don't do well, that we really need to do well, is yelling and screaming and marching is one thing, but getting them to Capitol Hill so that the elected representatives see and feel them. But secondly, we got to do something about voter registration and beyond. That is a commitment to vote. Each of those marchers ought to be signing a commitment to vote. Each of them ought to have a voter registration card, and yet they shouldn't be able to march if they don't have it.
Well, I mean, you talk about that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was in Alabama last week, so I was in Birmingham Wednesday and Thursday, Selma Friday, Montgomery Saturday. They had an election last week in Birmingham. The incumbent mayor is in a runoff there, 27% turnout. We're going to be breaking down the mayoral race in Atlanta, where we could see, for the first time in 3 decades, a non-African American becoming mayor. The last time they had the election there, it was around 14 or 16%. And I do believe absolutely that when we talk about being outraged about Charlottesville, being outraged about 45, and his and sympathizing with white supremacists, look, if we are not leveraging our power to the maximum, Lauren, the hell are we doing?
Right.
Well, I don't know that the problem is registration. I think we're pretty good, actually, at registration. I think we're not bad at voter turnout. We showed that in 2008 and 2012, certainly on a national level. On the local level, it's not as good, but it's not as good across the board. Because quite frankly,
on local level, it's awful.
People have become disillusioned with politics for very good reason. The reasoning is that they don't see much really changing their lives on a bread and butter level that really matters in their life. And frankly, I think we don't do political advocacy well when we come to what you're doing, which is really important. PACs, money, that's the piece we don't do well. The marching thing we've got done. We've got Martin Luther King perfected that. In his day, he was great. But I don't think the marching thing is really. I think it's great. I think it's cool in terms of the visual, the getting the people together. You do need the visual piece. But unless you put pressure on these politicians when it comes to the advocacy and the money, you will never change anything.
Malik?
So I'll give you an example, and I agree fully. So the Rizzo statue in Philadelphia, we just had the same issue. We mimicked Charlottesville, right? And so we have
a man who loved police brutality.
Oh yeah, nightstick in the cummerbund and all, right?
Dreamed about it when he slept.
We have this protest that occurs. A couple thousand people show up at the statue to protest it, and they want it down. The supporters of the statue decided to go get petitions to the tune of 18,000, and then went to have meetings with the mayor and city council. So it's, to your point as well, Scott, it's understanding the process. We're not effective in understanding the process of change. We have the message of change, we have the voice of change, but we've got to get the process.
But you've got to be intentional about it. And I don't think black people and brown people vote enough. We will march, but we don't vote. You ought not be allowed to march or complain unless you've got a voter registration card and a commitment to vote and the intentionality to change. If 45 and what's going on in America right now isn't enough to get you to vote, and it may not be.
You know, you understand that our voting power is blunted, of course, by the suppression issue and by the felon issue, which is a very intentional thing.
Got to overcome it.
And the way you overcome that, the way you overcome that is political advocacy and money and buying off and pressuring these politicians.
Fine.
That's what this is.
Get organized.
That's what it's going to go to.
Here's a bigger piece. Okay, all politics are local.
Exactly.
So we can talk about 45 all day long. What about the local mayor who's lethargic in his actions? What about, you know,
but I'm talking
some of these
about
county commissioner, county judge. No,
City
Scott.
council.
No, Scott.
But you got to change Congress.
No, Scott.
You got to take the Senate of the House back.
You can't talk about 2018 if you're not voting in the city election.
I said that too.
No, so again, I'm talking about Birmingham was a black city.
Exactly.
No,
and how many black people
we do not have to talk about white folks at all. Birmingham is a black city. 75%.
Ferguson.
27%.
Right. Exactly.
27.
And when you don't
in
vote,
Atlanta, if they hit 20, folks will be happy.
Right. And Mary
all I'm saying,
20 points ahead of all
I'm saying is, it is illogical. It is illogical to have power, to have numbers, and not exercise it. And again, that's one of the reasons that, look, Jeff Johnson and I talk about this all the time. We can speak about all these things moving forward, but if you don't confront the reality that voting is a part of this, it's not the only solution. Vote, because remember, after you vote, no, it's not the only thing. Here's the change. It's not the only thing, because after you vote, election day is over. That's the end of one process and the beginning of another. Right. Part of the problem is when we do vote and then we don't show up for years.
There you go.
I mean, you can't just vote. To your point, folks who got those petitions, they voted.
They targeted the politicians.
And they showed up
They targeted the power.
It was coordinated.
And
intentional.
Right. It was an actual strategy.
Absolutely.
All right, folks.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh, my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no. That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.